Hello, everybody. Welcome to Focus and Foundations. Name is Tina Kramer. I am the creator of Simple Learning and also the patent pending sound device. And I am here with my dear friend, Kelley. Kelley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Kelley Phipps, and I own a company called Empowering Minds. Within that company, I work with students through something called Centerpoint Learning Solutions. And we also provide a tutoring service. And what we do is we're boots on the ground, working with individuals that are struggling with learning issues, and that we help them to create a new foundation and really be able to learn how to move forward.
So Kelley and I were talking about the topic for this week, and we landed on motivation. If you've started to follow Kelley and I, we have a very practical approach to the way that we explain some of these issues that come up for people that have learning differences. You'll hear me say learning differences because we are getting the knowledge and we have the capability to create positive change for these individuals. And a disability to me is something that we can't change. And Kelley and I know that we can change these things. And we want to be able to have candid conversations so that they're very practical, because there is so much that's misunderstood. There's so much that is unknown. And we want to explain it in such a way that we would have appreciated having this conversation, or somebody having this conversation with us back when we were looking for answers and we first started on this journey. So we're going to talk today a little bit about motivation. I'm going to be kind of blunt. Sometimes, or a lot of the time, a client comes to me and they're using the word lazy. And they either tell me I struggle with being lazy, or my child is lazy, or my husband is lazy. We're not getting things done. You know, if they want to do something, it's amazing what they can accomplish. But if it's a responsibility that's work related and they don't necessarily really like it, it's always coming tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. Can you relate to that, Kelley, with your client?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we're talking about making a change, that takes effort. And if an individual is not interested in the effort, or does not believe the effort will actually produce anything, they're not going to be willing to do anything with you. And so that's one of the things that one of the criteria actually before I can work with that individual, whether I'm providing an intensive learning program or we're bringing them into tutor, they have to be willing to do something and know that they can do it. But that's the key thing, I think, Tina, right? Is we feel like these individuals have said, I'm lazy, I don't ever get anything done, or I didn't really want to do it, and so I didn't do it. And they own the label, when really maybe they don't think they can do it. So then they don't want to try to do it. Or in that sense of try to do it, they don't really know what to do to change anything.
I love the example. This is when I first started my career, and it was a huge aha moment for me. And I've got a bottle of water here. And imagine, you can't see my table, but imagine that it's sitting on the table. And somebody was explaining to me identity of self, or the lack thereof an identity of self. In that particular example, we were actually talking about autism. And we were talking about the fact that a child can have that bottle of water sitting on the table right in front of them. And if mom, usually it's mom, if mom happens to be in the room, no, they can become incredibly thirsty, never pick up the water, open it, and take a drink of it, because they don't know they're the ones that's supposed to, because their identity is tied up in another, and usually that is mom. Now, there's exceptions to that. I'm talking about a trend right now. So if, for me, understanding when you don't have a clear identity of self, like what that means, and that example to me, that was an aha moment for me when that example was given to me. So if you can imagine being in a state or being in a place to you actually know what to do. However, you don't know you're the one that needs to do it. That makes it really tough to take responsibility and to be motivated to do things, especially things that you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that you don't know that you don't know how, right? You're sitting there watching all of these things happen around you, and you don't know how you're supposed to actually do something. It's interesting because I know you're talking about, at least in your example, for an individual who is autistic, and from that aspect, the world sees that individual as autistic, right? So it's like they get put into a different category because that individual has an identified struggle. You've got these other individuals, and that's more of the ones that typically I'm going to work with, that there's nothing that has been identified directly that is causing that, and yet they're still there. It's kind of like, are you waiting for an invitation? You know, how many times will you say that? Here you go. Do I have to, do I have to hand it to you? And guess what? Yep, you do. And it's not that odd. It is not that odd to encounter individuals that we see that are not doing the things we expect them to. And it's because they really did need the invitation and then the empowerment to repeat their activity until they become an expert at it. We expect so much out of individuals, and we assume so many things as far as development goes that it's not accurate. And that's why these labels come out there, because we've expected something, we didn't get what we expected, so therefore it must be I'm lazy, right? I must be, or I'm not motivated. So I'll toss that back to you.
Okay, so I'm always working for the neurotypical community, because we raise awareness for the neurotypical community to understand learning differences, and then we're helping people with learning differences learn skills and concepts that are missing for them. Let me give an example, because we all deal with this. It's getting people to understand the more that someone that has a learning difference deals with. So one of my least favorite things to do is dishes. I will procrastinate dishes. I don't like to do dishes. So if somebody would come and they would say, "Hey, Tina, I tell you what, I'll give you a really nice glass of ice cold water if you do those dishes." I'm going to be like, okay, no, that doesn't motivate me at all. There is not an urge. That is not something that I want bad enough. But if somebody walks in and they say, "Hey, Tina, I tell you what, I'll give you $20 to do your own dishes," I would be like, okay, yeah, that's worth it. That raises that urge to the point that it brings me to motivation. It causes me to want to move. However, if somebody would walk in, I have got my house as a fixer-upper, and they say, "If you do your dishes consistently 7 days a week, we're going to replace your entire kitchen and we're going to give you a totally new kitchen." I'd be like, yes, I'll do dishes 3 times a day if we're going to do that. Okay, what we're talking about there is that urge. Did you see my face change? Considering what's going to be the outcome, what's going to be the reward of me doing that. That is a way to get people to understand what motivation is. We all deal with it on different levels. However, are individuals that have learning differences. First of all, we're taking a look at, have they got an identity of self yet? Has that been established well enough? And then secondly, it takes so much more to provide that urge of, okay, I do want to do this.
So I guess it depends on what it is you're looking for, right? Because the human experience is we act for, really, we're always functioning in a level of, I'm looking for something that's pleasurable. I want pleasure over pain in any situation, right? So the human experience, that's how we function. And why do I put my shoes on? Why do I not go barefoot? Well, I put my shoes on because there's rocks on the ground, or it's 30 degrees outside, or lots of different reasons I put my shoes on. But I put my shoes on because the fact that they're on feels better to my foot than not having them on. So I'm going to take that extra effort and put them on. So from that standpoint, and we look at something so tangible, then that helps us to be able to see, well, why do I do something? What is it that I need to do? So then it's a matter of seeing, what am I trying? What is my problem? What would I like to have? In your case, you're like, hey, yeah, I don't care about the dishes, but I do care about the state of my kitchen. And I know that's not something that I can do anything about, but if it were done for me, right? Nobody said, hey, we're going to provide you the money that you can go and you can do it yourself, right? That's not what they said. They said they would do it for you.
Yes.
And so then you're like, well, you'll do this. Of course I'll do that. It is more than a fair trade-off. This little bit of pain is worth all of that pleasure. So I would much rather do a few dishes consistently so my kitchen is beautiful. Right? So when it comes to learning or the motivation, because I'm thinking there's a combination of things here. One is motivation for action within life. And I think for many of our parents or individuals, it's that piece of, my kid doesn't clean their room. They don't do their homework. Maybe they do their homework, they don't turn it in. Maybe my spouse doesn't take the extra effort to really pick up after themselves. I'm just saying straight there. I mean, if I'm a woman and I think about a husband that doesn't pick up their clothes, right? All those little things that add up. So we think about the things that we see as a difficulty. We have to think of, well, what would it be like if they changed? Right? What would be different? What might be different? And is that difference enough to make them move?
And there's so many levels. There's so many different aspects to this. So there's another piece of it. I had a client that I worked with, and she talked about the fact it was her husband's responsibility to take the trash out, and he wouldn't do it. And she would, of course, it would turn into a fight for them. It's like, this is your part of your responsibility. You're supposed to do this. Why did you not do this? And he'd say, I did. And she'd be like, trust me, still sitting in the kitchen, you did not do this. And he'd be like, yes, I did. And she said it reached a point to where she physically would grab his hand, pull him into the kitchen, and be like, there it is. And she said he would go white, like his face would go blank. Okay, now that particular example, that's another level. Okay, we would say, you could say that person was lazy. If you don't know the story, if you truly don't understand, we tend to deal with very smart individuals. So if you tell that story, that thing I'm going to add is that gentleman was a chiropractor. So many years of school, very intelligent man. she said when she and I had the opportunity to work together, she goes, that's a huge aha moment. Because she goes, he would go totally white. He really thought he did it. The thing was, he did it in his imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So in his imagination, he saw himself take it out. He saw himself do the whole process and did not know the difference between his imagination and the physical world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. And the thing is, okay, so you're giving an example, and here's an individual that is successful. He's a successful individual,
Mhm.
right? Many times, as you said, there's levels too, right? When I work with an individual, and especially an adult, who has maybe or may not have already had the label of ADD, but they see themselves self-perceived. I'm a fast thinker. I'm a busy thinker. And how I know that is the characteristics of I'm disorderly. Okay. I'm disorderly. I start or don't finish, or I don't ever start. It's either I start and I don't finish, or I don't ever start something. I probably have difficulty with time management.
Yes.
I don't take responsibility for my actions. I feel a very strong sense of justice, in the sense of I'm offended when I'm called on things, because exactly like you said, right? I don't see that as part of what in my aspect of things. So when I work with those individuals, it is that same aspect, but maybe not quite as strong as saying I thought I had done it, but it's the thought came in my mind. I'm moving so fast. The minute the thought came in my mind, I mentally checked the box. And I mentally checked the box, therefore it's done, and I move on. So my world, it's like I have blinders on. I see this. I don't see the things that are here. I don't see the things that are here. I see this, what's right in front of my face, right? And so, like you said, before you've mentioned the tomorrow syndrome, in the sense of, oh, I'll get to it. Well, it's almost the yesterday syndrome, in that I checked it off. It came in and it's gone. Therefore, it's done. And so those individuals, when we help them to be present, help them to have a better understanding of self and all the pieces that are part of self, then instead of here, they start being like this. And they start knowing they have to look down, or they have to look up, that there's more than just this little piece to them. So,
Yes, absolutely. So there are in motivation, there's so many different aspects, and there's different levels depending on where the individual is in their learning difference. Another piece can be, I always explain it this way, and please remember, I'm a teacher. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist. So I come up with very practical ways to be able to, for people to be able to understand what is actually happening. So when we move into consequence, this idea of consequence, and when I'm teaching consequence, I teach it quite differently. I'm teaching it from the point of view of the individual's interaction with change. So looking at cause and effect, and then looking at that cause and effect as one thing. I'm not breaking that apart. So oftentimes in the world, consequence is a well-disguised punishment. However, I don't teach it that way. I'm looking at, so for example, if I flip a light switch and the light comes on, that whole thing, I flipped the light switch, the light came on, is a consequence. So interestingly enough, oftentimes our clients think in pictures, and those pictures stand alone. They're separate. So that bit of I flip the light switch, like they're done. All right. And then maybe they go and watch TV, or maybe they have all kinds of other different thoughts. And the connection to the light switch went on is not made. So if you have a break and that connection between the two is not made, then you lose motivation as well, because you're not connecting to, I finish my homework and I don't get in trouble. It's just that moment of, I have to do something I really don't like to do. I don't like homework. It's hard. I'm not going to do. And then they squirrel. And it takes time, and we have to have that foundation of that identity of self in place to get the reward, or to get the positive, to cause that urge of, oh, I want to do this thing. Now, sometimes the urge comes from, I don't want this thing. That's where, if I don't pay my bills, the bank's going to come take my house away from me. You know, I don't want that to happen. So I pay my bills. However, I had a client, I had a lady come to me, and she was in a house trailer. She was evicted, her whole entire family, from the house trailer. And the reason being, just like what I said, she did not make the connection. Now, like Kelley, you said, there was a problem with time as well. But she did not make the connection between, if I don't get these bills paid in a certain period of time, my landlord's going to throw me out. And he did.
And then I'm, instead of dealing with the fact that I didn't pay my bills, now I have all of this other stuff that I'm dealing with, and I never quite get back to, I didn't pay my bills.
Right.
Right. I never quite get back to that. And I think that's real life. So Tina, you've talked a lot about, you kind of gone to a big picture as far as this idea of motivation. And really, if you don't mind, I want us to bring us back to this whole idea of self, because I think that is really and truly is the root of all of really of the human experience.
Yeah.
And it's that understanding that I exist, right? First of all, that I exist, and that I exist in this moment of time. And that's a place. I exist in a place, and I exist in a moment of time. And when I'm talking about me, that I'm talking about my physical body, but there's other aspects to me. And one of those aspects is this great ability to think. It's my imagination, right? We all have an imagination, even those of us that say as an adult, yeah, I don't have an imagination. I'm not imaginative. No, I'm not creative. I'm not, well, I'm like, you're a person. Hello? You have an imagination, right? At some point you've trained it out of yourself, but you have one. Otherwise you couldn't think. So you have that, right? It's more than just this blob of 2 pounds or however many pounds are in our brain. It's more than that. But we have an imagination, and then we all have energy. That's part of who we are. We all have it. And sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low, but we all have it. And so all 3 parts of those things are us. It's the human experience, and it's scientific, and it's certain amount of it's spiritual, religious, if you want to put it that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It is. It's a fact. So if I want to be able to maneuver through life like it seems like people are supposed to, then I better get myself to be present. I got to do it. I got to make sure I'm rooted in the now. I have to be rooted in the now. And that's so when you're talking about they're lacking identity, it's that sense of, I don't know what it is to be me, to be rooted in now, to be, I don't connect with my energy. I don't see that as a part of my physical body and my imagination. It's something separate than me. And so to identify that, I mean, I think that as listeners, maybe people are like, oh, that's a little wild, but we all can see that as being true. And there are ways to help an individual to connect to all of those things. And that's part of what both of us do, just in different ways. Right.
Yes.
But it's the start. And if you're not there, I don't care whatever stuff you do. It's gonna, I mean, I've worked with people that have gone seriously therapies and program after program after program after program. And they're like, why are you going to be any different? I'm like, because we're going to start from here. We're not
Yeah.
coming from here. We're going to start from here. That's this whole foundation. Yeah. So,
And the exciting thing is if we have somebody come to us that has done all of those different therapies, oftentimes we get that foundation in place for them and they just soar.
yeah.
Because finally all that work that they have done has something to firmly stand on, and they just take off so quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've never found it to be wasted ever, 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 ever. But it is frustrating when you feel like you've spent so much time working. I've been working on me, right? And you're like, and you're trying to tell me that the coolest thing about it, I think, and you and I had said this earlier, right? The coolest thing about it is that by helping an individual become aware of themselves, we are really empowering them to change their entire world. And then they do. And they change, and in changing their world, they're changing the world in their family, and they're changing the worlds of the individuals that they come in contact with, and things get better. It's not magic. It takes work. But once you start going down that process and you start reaping the personal reward, then doing the work doesn't seem so much like work. And it becomes easier and easier. But it's always possible to go backwards. Always possible to go backwards if you don't keep working on. It's kind of like the analogy of an empty house. If you leave a house empty, even though it was built very well, will it maintain its integrity?
I think it will, but over time you'll lose. I mean, but the thing that I have found, I know when I first start with somebody and we get that identity of self in place, I always say, I can't turn this off. When we get that identity to finally go, it goes. Now, it's like anything else. If you put the work in it, you take the responsibility for it, you continue to practice, it's going to be much more successful. You have to do your due diligence. You can't fall back into, oh, I'm so glad that I know that. Now I'm going to continue watching TV.
Exactly. And I think it's to level, once we get self in place, self is there. But the things that I guess what I'm referring to are more of the behaviors that we're wanting to change, right, are still behaviors that need to be, you still have to do your dishes.
I still do.
You still, and even after your kitchen is beautiful, you still have to do your dishes. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today as we talked from a really in-depth level about motivation. We're going to talk more about that in upcoming opportunities that we have to share. And if you've liked what you've heard so far, hey, we need you to hit that like button, to share, and to subscribe to our channel. Hey, we are Focus and Foundation, with Tina and Kelley. And we love that you've joined us today, and we look forward for you to join us again.
Thanks, everybody. Take care and have a great day.